What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Retro Hoop Collectibles. It is the first of the month, and it's the first of the month. Wake up, wake up, wake up. First of the month, and we have gem rate data. By the way, I don't have any connection with Gem Rate or anything like that, but their Instagram, if you like keeping up on, pop reports and all that stuff, creme de la creme, baby. Creme de la creme. They got Gem Rate data for the month of April, pretty much what went down, what happened in the month of April in terms of grading. I always like looking at this kind of stuff because, just kind of gives you an idea of what's going on with the grading market and what's happening. So let's hop on over. And PSA, for the first time in a long time, I know everybody wants to look at that 1.2 million, and that's just a ridiculously impressive number in terms of output. Flat from last month, though. So last month was 1.2, and then a million before that, and then it was a million before that, and then, so on and so forth. A million before that. So they've been pretty flat, hovering around that million mark is what it looks like. I think there's nothing to talk about there, right? I mean, PSA continues to just be the big dog. They are the market leader. They have the biggest slice of the pie. If you were to divide up the entirety of what is the grading market and slice it up into 10 slices, they have 9 of them. And everybody else is kind of just fighting for the rest, which is, market leader. What are you going to do, 600. But so what I wanted to look at here was not necessarily PSA, but SGC down 20% month over month. CSG or CSG, CCG, CGC down 32% overall, and Beckett down 21% overall. There's also something to think about too, is that I'm pretty sure PSA, so you got to remember, PSA has about a 2-month backlog, 3-month backlog. And so what they're doing today, we won't know for another 2 or 3 months. So going into the year, it sounds like they had a pretty healthy backlog. And it's, from what I've heard from other people and from what I've seen from some of the videos online, they're at about a 2-month to 2.5-month turnaround time for the low dollar grading, right? So if that's the case, they probably have, maybe about a month and a half or so, I'd say, outside of their normal turnaround time in terms of backlog, right? So they have a relatively, what I would consider a healthy backlog from what I can see on this, because they've been pretty consistent. At about 1 million a month. Now, everybody else seems to be pretty up and down. Now, SGC, what I've been seeing so far is that they live and die by their specials. Is kind of what's been going on. But one of the interesting pieces of data that Gem Rate got into that published this week, and this month, I don't know if they've been consistently doing it, but it's the first time I saw it on their Instagram. And we'll get to that in a second. But, everybody else, other than PSA, down 20% minimum, 32% overall for CSG. We keep seeing this pop report maintenance situation, which is interesting. But the CGC is the TCG side of Collectors Certified Collectibles Group. The fact that they're down 32% probably has a lot to do with the fact that PSA is grading 1 million non-sport, 500,000 non-sport cards every month. I guarantee you they're snatching away a ton of market share from that company. A little over 600,000 in terms of sports, pretty flat. I mean, down 1%, and then TCG up 1%. So I mean, again, just flat across the board. But everybody else is just dropping. I mean, down 23% in sports cards for SGC, which is kind of tough because that's primarily all they are, is sports cards. They haven't really broken into the TCG side of things consistently, I would say. Man, Beckett down. Beckett not down on the sports too much, but definitely down on the TCG side. Nobody's grading TCG with Beckett right now, which is interesting. I mean, just look at that gap. I mean, it's insane. Absolutely insane. They've been hovering over 1 million cards. They broke through a couple times here back in March and then in what looks like July of last year. But then after starting in October of last year, they've just been consistently at 1 million. And again, I got to imagine that that's, this peak here and this peak here for last month, record-setting numbers for PSA. So that's, that's kind of the thing. Items graded by month. We're not going to get into that. The other one that I want, excluding PSA. So this is the same chart, excluding PSA. So, this chart just shows you how above everybody else PSA is, and then how everybody else is just kind of fighting for second place here. But, there's really, outside of PSA, it's really a preference thing, right? There's there's no clear second. I mean, everybody, it's all kind of just bouncing around. But, so this is by category. That's not the one that I wanted to get into really. Because it's all pretty much the same numbers. Here is era. Now this is the one that I wanted to really kind of touch on because I thought it was interesting, the breakdown. Everybody else for the most part is about half in the 2020s, and then the other half is just everything below. PSA seems to dominate anything in the 80s. 10% is their number. And then everything else is, everybody else is just kind of scraping by. But anything 1950s and earlier is the vast majority of what SGC is seeing. And, that just speaks to what their pedigree is, right? Like, their pedigree is vintage. Like, vintage, not just retro, 80s, 90s, and then you can kind of bundle 70s in there. But, vintage cards is SGC. You could argue that if you were to find a Mickey Mantle in your attic somewhere, the best place to go with that card is SGC. So, anything 1950s earlier, it seems to be a good chunk of SGC's output. And then, of course, the other half being, early 2020s. Everybody's fighting for that, that ultra-modern market is kind of where everything's at. But look at TCG. Oh, they have PSA TCG broken out by itself, which is interesting. And then half of that is new stuff. And then all of it's just vintage. Is there Pokemon stuff from the set? Well, I guess you're talking TCG, so it's like, non-sports and TCG. Okay, so there could be some, Garbage Pail Kid stuff in there. There could be, Batman cards, Marvel stuff, old stuff from the 70s. Because it's TCG includes non-sports as well. So, but I really like this view here. By era. Obviously, CGC, which is the TCG side of the CSG umbrella group. So many acronyms, Jesus. They just don't grade anything past the 90s because that's kind of where Pokemon and all that stuff, Yu-Gi-Oh cards and Magic the Gathering and all that jazz. You're not going to see anything in any other era other than early 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s. But this is a cool little view here. It just kind of shows you where SGC lies in terms of their output. They continue to be the number one place to send anything 1950s or older. But again, gem rate by era. So gem rates includes PSA 10s, SGC 10s, Beckett 9.5s. Interesting. So, well, this is interesting. I'm seeing this for the first time, guys, so I'm just kind of reacting to it. But only 47% of PSA's sports cards get a gem mint. 71% of their TCG gets a gem mint, PSA 10. 45, 2010. So here's, if you look at your gem rate, you're sending anything to PSA that's in the 90s, you got a 12% chance of it gemming. 20% if it's in the early 2000s, and then anything 2010, 2020s, you got 50-50 shot. Which is interesting. That's an interesting. I'm going to probably look at this a little deeper, but 42%, 32%, and 8% for SGC. Yeah, and they're just not, the 1950s, they're not handing out no gems, which is interesting. This is cool. This is an interesting little look at this. 2010s and 2020s, they'll definitely give you a 10. You got a 50-50 shot there. But anything 2000s and below, good luck. Which is kind of interesting because like the majority of what I'd like to collect is in this 2000s, 90s era. But the interesting thing is SGC's, no better. They're pretty tight when it comes to that. So very, very interesting stuff. Somebody commented here, SGC dominating the vintage grading. Yep, I agree. All right. Just a really quick, I just wanted to take a look at that with you guys. PSA continues to be the absolute juggernaut that they are. How long they'll be able to keep up with that, and hopefully they have a healthy backlog that's allowing them to do that. I would imagine that if they were slowing down, we would have heard something by now in terms of layoffs, or just cutting back on their workforce. So I haven't heard anything like that. So I gotta imagine that they're continuing to crank out 1 million cards, and they're going to continue to do so for probably the rest of the year, I would imagine. I'd be surprised. That's 2 months in a row that they've been flat, but it's only month over month, not consistently flat. So they did 1 million in January, 1 million in February, then they did 1.2 million in March, and then they did 1.2 million in April. So we'll see. We'll see how that continues to be. But yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys watching. As always, leave me a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Do you think that PSA can sustain this 1 million a month? I know they're doing some price drops. They're doing some $15 grading specials. And I don't think we'll see anything below $15 with PSA. I'd be shocked if we do. I think that's a sweet spot for them now. The days of $9 grading fees are probably long gone, unless they figure out that whole PSA set registry to give you a discount on the PSA registry items that you still need to have graded for your registry. I don't know. If they figure that out, maybe we might see $9, but who knows. Thank you guys as always for watching. I appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Peace.